That's the first thing Emily says to me when I walk through the door. No warning. No conversation. Just those 4 words, I was stunned. I mean, yeah, we'd had our issues lately. We'd been arguing more than usual. But I thought it was one of those rough patches every couple goes through. I had no idea she was already done with us. We'd been together for almost 7 years, married for 5. We had a 4-year-old daughter, Lucy, who I adored. To me, we were just dealing with regular stress, stuff we could work through. But apparently she'd already made up her mind. Emily was ice cold about it. She had it all mapped out. She wanted the house, the car, and to make it worse, she wanted child support. That hit me straight in the core. I was already paying for nearly everything. I'd worked my whole life to keep us comfortable. Why was she acting like I didn't contribute enough? My lawyer told me not to take it personally. He said it was normal for ex-wives to go after as much as they could in a divorce. It didn't feel normal. It felt like betrayal. I tried reasoning with her. I reminded her I was covering Lucy's expenses, handling the mortgage, the car payments, even most of the groceries. But she didn't care. She wanted it all legally set in stone, a monthly payment like a bill she didn't want. She wanted control. She wanted to drain everything I had worked for, as if I was some stranger who no longer mattered. And the worst part, she wanted to limit my time with Lucy. We'd agreed I'd see her every weekend. But now Emily wanted to cut that to every other weekend. Just 2 weekends a month. I couldn't believe it. Lucy was my world. The thought of not seeing her every weekend felt like losing everything that mattered. I had to fight to keep my regular time with her. It wasn't easy. The first time she dropped Lucy off after we'd settled the schedule, the tension was thick. Emily barely looked at me. She didn't say a word except to hand me Lucy's bag. She looked at me with that familiar expression, cold, resentful. She handed Lucy over like she was passing off groceries, not our child. Then she had the nerve to tell me not to let Lucy stay up late, as if she still had control over what I did with my own daughter. And then she walked off without a goodbye to either of us. When I got Lucy settled inside, a wave of exhaustion hit me. I was working weekends just to make ends meet. Having Lucy every weekend meant cutting down on work hours, but there was no way I'd give up that time. Not for anything, Emily might have been ready to erase our marriage and move on. Lucy was the one thing I refused to let go of. After the divorce, the reality of my new life hit hard. Every weekend that was mine with Lucy came at a cost. I worked during the week and was supposed to drop everything to pick her up Friday night, keep her all weekend, then be back in the office Monday morning. It wore me down, but she was my kid. I wasn't going to back out. Emily knew what this was doing to me. She had to. I was still paying bills and handling expenses, even though I'd moved into a tiny apartment to keep up with child support. But that wasn't enough. Every month, like clockwork, she wanted that payment. My lawyer said that's just how it is, but I'd been doing everything right and still somehow ended up losing. If I missed a payment, Emily would be on me about it. One Monday, after a full weekend with Lucy, I walked into work feeling half alive. My boss pulled me aside and said the weekends off were becoming a problem. My performance was slipping. I tried explaining the divorce, the custody, the whole situation, but he shook his head. "We all have our stuff," he said. "But the work has to get done." I kept pushing through, trying to balance it all. A couple months later, I got the news I'd been dreading. My boss called me into his office and told me they were letting me go. 15 years of hard work, just like that. They didn't even give me a chance to fix it. I was stunned. I couldn't waste time feeling sorry for myself. I had bills, a house to somehow keep up with, and that monthly check for Emily and Lucy. With no job and savings draining fast, I scrambled to find work. I looked online, in the papers, nothing solid. Flipping burgers for minimum wage wasn't going to keep up with the mortgage, let alone child support. Worse, if I didn't pay, Emily would be on me. 4 months went by without anything solid. My savings were nearly gone, and I missed a couple of payments. I didn't tell Emily I'd lost my job. I didn't want her to throw it back in my face. But the minute that money stopped, she called, screaming about why the payment was late. I tried explaining I was looking for work, but she didn't care. The money wasn't in her account, and that was all that mattered. I knew she'd report it. A few days later, there was a loud knock at my door. It was 6 in the morning. 2 police officers stood there, serious expressions on their faces. They asked if I was who I was. I nodded. Before I knew it, they told me I was being arrested for unpaid child support. It was surreal. I'd thought maybe they'd give me a warning or tell me to show up in court. Instead, there were handcuffs on my own doorstep. On the ride to the station, all I could think about was Lucy. How was I supposed to explain this to her? How could I tell my little girl that her dad had been taken to jail because he couldn't keep up with payments? They booked me. They took my clothes, my shoes, my wallet, everything that made me feel like myself. They handed me an orange jumpsuit and led me to a holding cell. I sat there surrounded by people who'd actually committed crimes, thinking, I don't belong here. I'm here because I lost my job, not because I'm a criminal. No one cared. It was the weekend. They told me I wouldn't see a judge until Monday. I was stuck for 2 full days. I tried to keep to myself. I sat on that cold metal bench and stared at the floor. My mind kept circling back to Emily, imagining her feeling victorious. The thought that she might be telling Lucy I'd abandoned her hurt more than anything. By Monday, I was exhausted. I barely slept. I finally saw the judge. He gave me 5 months in the county detention center for falling behind on payments I couldn't make because I'd lost my job trying to be there for my daughter. There was no sympathy, no acknowledgement that I'd been putting in the effort. Just a sentence and a case-closed attitude. At the detention center, things got worse. They put me with guys who didn't care why I was there. I kept my head down, stuck to a routine. Eat, sleep, work out, repeat. I wasn't looking to make friends, but I met a few guys there for the same reason. That was oddly comforting. It didn't make things easier, but it helped to know I wasn't alone. Every day I thought about Lucy. I hated that I couldn't be there for her. I feared Emily might be feeding her some story that I'd abandoned her. I counted down the months and kept my head down so I wouldn't get into trouble. My parents sent letters and visited when they could. I appreciated it, but it only made me miss Lucy more. Deep down, I felt like I wasn't done yet. There had to be a way out of this mess that would set things right. I didn't know how, but I was determined to get my life back for me and for Lucy. A few weeks into my sentence, I got a letter. I thought it was from my parents. But when I saw the name Brandon on the envelope, my heart started pounding. Brandon was an old friend, a mutual friend of mine and Emily's. I hadn't heard from him in years. I opened the letter. His words hit me like a brick. He'd heard about my situation, the divorce, the child support, the jail. He said he'd kept quiet because he didn't want to get involved, but he couldn't stay silent anymore. Then he dropped the bomb. Emily had been cheating on me for years. She'd been seeing someone else since before Lucy was born. I was stunned. Brandon said I should get a paternity test. He thought there was a good chance Lucy wasn't even mine. I could barely process it. I loved Lucy more than anything. She'd been my daughter in every sense. But now doubt crept in. Things that hadn't made sense before started clicking into place. The late nights, the excuses, it all looked different. When I read that letter, I gripped it so hard it nearly ripped. My world flipped upside down again. After that, I couldn't think straight. I knew what I had to do. The minute I was out, I would get that test and find out the truth, no matter how painful. I wasn't about to keep paying child support and go through hell if Lucy wasn't mine. I felt betrayed on a whole new level, but a new determination kicked in. If she'd been lying, I was going to make her pay. After the letter, my time in jail changed. I kept my head down, stayed out of trouble, and waited for the release date. When I finally got out, I didn't waste a minute. I found a lawyer who was sharp and willing to take my case. I told him everything: the prison time, Emily's demands, and Brandon's letter. He listened and said we'd get the paternity test done as soon as possible. We set a court date to address the child support and the mess Emily had made. The day of the test, I showed up and Emily was already there with Lucy. She looked furious, arms crossed tight, trying to make me feel guilty. I didn't care. I stayed focused on Lucy. The second she saw me, she ran over and wrapped her little arms around me. That hit me hard. I'd spent years thinking she was my daughter, raising her and loving her. Now I was about to find out the truth. I hugged her, kissed her forehead, and told her I loved her. Then I handed her back to Emily. 2 weeks. That's how long we had to wait for the results. Those were the longest, most sleepless 2 weeks of my life. Every day I looked in the mirror and saw dark circles that wouldn't go away. What would I do if she wasn't mine? Could I handle it? I'd practically raised her. The thought of losing her tore me up. Finally, the envelope arrived. I remember standing in my living room staring at it, almost too afraid to open it. I sat down, tore it open, and forced myself to read. 100%. I wasn't her father. Just like that, the last 4 years of my life with Lucy felt ripped away. I don't remember dropping the paper. It was on the floor, and I just sat there, feeling like someone had reached in and turned my insides to ice. I'd loved that little girl like she was my own, only to find out she wasn't. After I pulled myself together, I called my lawyer and told him the results. I wanted to move forward. I wanted to sue Emily for fraud, for emotional damage, and to recover the child support I'd paid. My lawyer was on board and started the paperwork. I felt a little vindicated, finally fighting back. But the feeling of loss lingered. Losing Lucy as my daughter wasn't something I'd counted on. Emily had robbed me of years I could never get back. Lucy would probably never understand what had happened. Still, I wasn't going to let Emily win. She'd deceived me and dragged me through hell. I wanted justice. The day of the court hearing came. I was ready. I'd been through prison, the lies, the job loss, and the worst. Finding out Lucy wasn't biologically mine, I sat in the back of a cab, nerves and determination mixing inside me. I thought about what I'd say and how I'd expose Emily for what she'd done. My lawyer met me at the door and gave me a quick rundown of the plan. Emily was already inside, put together and trying to hide that she knew what was coming. The trial started and Emily went first. She claimed she hadn't known who Lucy's father was at the time. She said she'd believed I was the dad and didn't want to break up our family. She tried to play it like she'd done it for Lucy's sake. It was unbelievable watching her twist everything. Then my lawyer stood up. He laid it out. Brandon's letter, the paternity test, the years of child support I'd paid while she took advantage of me. He revealed that Emily's boyfriend, Cole, was Lucy's biological father and that she'd been collecting child support from both of us. I watched Emily's face drop as the truth came out. There was no talking her way out of it. The judge listened as my lawyer presented the payments and the fraud. He saw it for what it was. When he spoke, he made it clear he understood. He looked directly at Emily and said she'd committed fraud, a serious crime. Then came the ruling. Emily would have to pay back the child support I'd paid. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison for fraud. I almost couldn't believe it. Emily, who'd put me through hell, was finally facing consequences. I thought I'd feel nothing but satisfaction. At first I did, but then I watched her being led away and the reality hit me. Lucy, who'd known me as her dad, was about to lose her mom too. I'd won in court, but it didn't make the mess any easier for Lucy. The judge granted me primary custody since Emily was going to jail, and Cole wasn't stepping up. Cole received a lower child support order to help cover Lucy's needs. As far as the law was concerned, I was still her father. She might not have been my blood, but she was my daughter in every way that mattered. Emily's deception had nearly destroyed us both. In the end, I got what I really wanted. Lucy was still mine. Leaving the courtroom, I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. I'd won legally, but I'd fought a war and was left holding the pieces of what used to be a family. I knew one thing for sure. I would do whatever it took to make sure Lucy had a good future.